I'm Gregg.
And I'm Allie. And who are you, Gregg?
I'm the founder of Phx Ventures, a seed stage venture capital firm here in Phoenix, Arizona. How about you? Who are you?
I'm Allie. I'm a two-time founder. I've been in the Phx Venture system for about 20 years, and now I'm running Phx Forward, which is a very exciting impact organization.
So I've heard.
It was your brainchild. So why don't you tell us about it?
I'm excited about it. Well, I'll say that I care a lot about company building. It's probably too much about company building, but I think that sustainable growth companies can have maybe more impact on individuals, families, and communities than almost any other institution. And so I'd love to see more of that in a community I care deeply about, which is Metro Phoenix. And so I think that three things need to happen to have more of that. I think we need to have an active capital deployment. So Phx Ventures is part of that. I think you have to have a lot of company formation, which we're doing something in a venture studio called Phoenix Launch that you know about. Maybe we'll talk about at some point. And the third piece that I really want to lean into, which is where Forward fits in, is on community engagement. So I think if you've got capital deployment, if you've got company formation, if you've got community engagement, you've got the makings, especially if that's focused on one area like software, you've got the makings for a really powerful ecosystem. So Phx Forward will help drive the software community forward to try to help Arizona become a top software state in the country.
Because there's quite a few impact organizations in Phoenix already, and how is Phx Forward going to be different from what already exists? Or should I say complementary to what already exists?
Well, I'm on the board of a couple of those already, and I think there's an opportunity for a startup alliance here that Phx Forward can be an important part of. And so there's no reason to try to compete with other communities. There's a reason to connect with other communities and try to drive scale through integrating across these organizations. So what I think is unique about Forward is there's not another organization that I'm aware of that's focused on driving more educational content and more connection. And I would say education-driven events specifically for people who want to build venture scale software companies. So that's our focus. We want Arizona to become a top software state in the country, and I think that's only going to happen with more focus on that particular sector. And I'm happy to we can talk more about why I think that matters. But this is the 40% of venture dollars flow to software companies. So if we want more venture capital in this state, that will only happen if we have more software companies here. And so I think that's great for all of Arizona's economy.
Well, I've gotten to see firsthand what that does for our economy being part of Campus Logic. You're the founder and CEO of that company, which exited in 2022.
Yes.
Lucy, and that was a great exit for the state, for your investors, for everyone at Campus Logic. It really did impact the individuals there, their families, and the whole community. And that's what you mean, I think, when you say we want to drive big impact for good.
Yeah, I think companies with healthy cultures that have high growth, that have broad employee ownership in those companies can have incredible impact on those areas that I mentioned, individuals, families, and communities. So Campus Logic was a lot of fun, a lot of work. Just such a great team came together to help drive that. So that was a fun experience.
Awesome. Should we talk about the Phx Founders podcast?
Yes.
Why we're here today? What is this podcast? Do we need another podcast?
I've had people say to me before, why are there so many podcasts? And nobody ever says, there's too many books in the world.
That's true.
So I think we should think about podcasts like books. I mean, and I think this podcast will appeal to people who want to learn more about founders building venture scale software companies in Arizona. And that's what this is. We want to put founders front and center and tell their story. I think there are incredible founders here building very interesting companies. I don't know if I think all of us are so great at telling our stories. And so I hope this podcast will really showcase the incredible founders that are building really impactful software companies right here in Arizona.
Yeah. And we're not only going to talk to founders who have exited a company. We're going to talk to founders at every stage of the startup, right?
Yeah, I hope we spend most of our time with people that are in the thick of it, that are building. There's so many lessons to learn when you're kind of in the trenches. So I think we will have some people who have exited, but I'm hoping we get to spend a lot of time in the coming years with founders who are starting, scaling. Maybe they've just raised a round of capital. they're probably having a specific set of experiences that other founders can learn from. So I hope this becomes a resource to anybody, not just in Arizona, but a resource for people that are building venture scale companies everywhere, software companies particularly, but especially those that are building that right here in Arizona.
What do you think we do a practice interview? What do you think about practice interview?
Sounds ominous,
It does. It sounds horrible.
but let's do it.
But we should show the listeners what they're going to get, and then they can decide if they actually want to tune into the podcast or not.
Let's do it.
It's V1.
Let's do it.
Okay. I have some questions prepared for you. You have
This is
not read them.
Instead of the lean startup, this is like the lean podcast, right? We're going to...
Yeah.
Okay, let's do it.
When did you know almost certainly that Campus Logic was going to have an exit? That magical moment that every founder dreams about. When did you know, oh my gosh, this is going to happen?
Well, there's probably two points in time. One where there was clarity, but the first one I want to make a point, because I think this is applicable to anybody who decides to take venture capital. When you decide to take outside investment, and I think that includes taking money from angel investors all the way through institutional capital, you're making a decision right then that you're going to do everything you can to deliver shareholder value, and that almost certainly includes selling the company. And so whenever you decide to take venture capital, you are committing to go all in on unlocking the very best returns you can for your investors. And if that's not something someone wants to do, you just shouldn't take outside capital. So we were building at Campus Logic. We built an enterprise grade software company. So you're talking about full security. We're selling to colleges, universities. So you had to have a fully baked security model. Implementations were involved in integrating to the student information system. So there was a lot going on, larger contract sizes that took a longer time to sell. And so that was expensive to build, so I knew we were going to raise money for that. So that was one point in time where I knew there would be an exit because, look, if you're going to take outside money, you need to do all you can to deliver. But really the second point in time was as things started to really, our growth just continued to ramp and inflect. We just started to get a lot of inbound interest from people who said, hey, your company's really interested. It's growing like crazy. It's profitable. You got a great team. Would you ever consider selling the company? And we had really wonderful outside investors. JMI Equity and Dragoneer Investment Group were our sponsors. And we just had the right level of interest at the right time. And so it was really kind of spring, summer of 2021 where there was enough interest that we decided we ought to kind of pick our heads up and look up a little bit and see what was out there. And so that was the time where we knew, and we talked to the board about it. They agreed we ought to hire a banker, and we did. And so we ran a process in the fall and signed definitive agreements on New Year's Eve, 2021.
Okay, you're making it sound very methodical. What did it feel like when you knew this is happening? Like, I did it. I'm going to get this huge return for our investors, for our state, for our employees, for my family. Like, tell me about that moment.
Well, this is going to sound, I think what I'm about to say probably resonates with people who have sold a company before, and it might sound a little bit weird to other people. There's something, that's both satisfying and a little bit dissatisfying about selling a company. You've spent all this time building a company. So of course I felt great that we were able to deliver a great return for our investors because 100% of our employees own stock in the company. It was good for all of our employees. Of course, it was good for me and the executive team as well. But when you've spent a decade building something and then you sell it, it's also part of you, And so, but to be clear, it felt great. It felt I was so proud of not just what our executive team was able to do, but really all of our employees, every customer success manager, every sales leader, every marketing person, every software engineer, every product person. I felt really great for all of the years of effort that so many people put in. But it is a little bit, it's a new chapter whenever you sell a company and, the thing you've been working on for a decade is no longer yours.
So it was bittersweet.
Yeah.
So, and Campus Logic was not your first venture. It wasn't even your second or third venture. So knowing what you know now, being on the other side of this, if you could go back and redo any one of your previous companies that didn't succeed, which one would you pick and what would you do differently?
Let me acknowledge first that I'm completely and wholly unemployable. So that's why,
Why?
for people like me, you have to start companies because no one else will hire you. That's what you have to do.
Why?
You know, I don't play well with others, I guess. I don't know what it is. No, I love the, I think company building is exhilarating. It's fun to be a driver. And I like to think that I'm collaborative, but I also have, fairly strong opinions about certain things and want to drive that forward. But your question of what would I do differently, I think is, I hope we ask that a lot in this podcast because I think that's a really, it requires introspection and thoughtfulness. And so I hope we ask that a lot and get a lot of that from founders. There's so much to learn in company building. One thing that I feel like I've learned multiple times, which means I haven't learned it, I have to keep relearning it. But one thing I think that whenever you think about building a company, you want to start with where are we going, and then what needs to be done to get there. And the next step when you start to scale a company is where I've made some mistakes. And the natural inclination is how am I going to do this? So where are we going? What needs to be done to get there? How am I going to do those things? And when I've made the evolution from, still where are we going? That's the mission. What needs to be done, defining those things. But the real pivotal point is, and who? It's not how am I going to do this myself? It's who can I get to join the cause here to really inflect growth. And when I think about any success at Campus Logic or any other company that I've been around, it very rarely is one person doing, solving these problems. So it's whenever you can get the motion of where are we going and everyone's unified on that, let's get clarity around what we're going to work on. But when you can start to attract top talent in there, that's when growth really inflects. And so the mistakes I've made have probably been being too slow or not being able to find, recruit and bring on top talent to help drive the company to the ultimate destination.
Is there a startup from your past that if you applied the right talent now you think could have been more successful?
The first company I started was a really incredible experience. It was a good outcome. I probably sold it too early. And, there were some reasons for that. I'd come off of a previous startup that didn't work, that I joined a team that didn't work. And so I had a little bit of scar tissue around that. So we had offer to sell a company early. We probably took that offer earlier. But I think if I'd had a different team, if I would have hired and attracted a team that had kind of bigger aspirations, they probably would have pushed me more in that direction. I think my aspirations could have been bigger, for sure. But no regrets. I'm really happy with where I am, and everything kind of leads up to wherever you are today. But that's one thing where I think if I would have hired a different team in that first company at the executive level, maybe we would have had a different set of ambitions and gone bigger.
That's great. How many exits have you had? Can I ask?
3 of companies that I've started, but certainly the one that was most significant was Campus Logic. And I say significant meaning we grew to about 50 million in revenue over a 7-year period of time, and the company was very profitable. And so that was that in particular was the biggest with most scale. We had a couple hundred employees, most of whom were here in Arizona, and so that for me that was the most exciting. Also, the longest in duration too. I mean, I spent a decade on that company when you include all the building V1 of the product, making a bunch of mistakes there, and then trying to recover from those mistakes. But that was a decade of time spent on that company. And I do think it takes a decade. And I think when in this podcast, we'll hear that from a lot of founders that have built a scale company. We're going to be talking to Heidi Jananga in our first episode, I believe, here. And Heidi's been working on on that company for a really long time. Clay Mask has been working on, Keep, formerly Infusionsoft, for probably 20 years. Like, so it's when you're building a large, enduring company, it just takes a lot of years.
How many startups have you been a part of that had to shutter?
That I started?
Started or joined early?
Well,
Joiner status.
so I joined one in 1999. It was a high-profile company here in Arizona. In fact, it was the largest venture round ever raised at the time. A company called LeapSource, and that one didn't work out. It was backed by a great private equity firm, GTCR, out of Chicago, and but it was a different period of time. Raising capital in 1999 was probably easier than it was in 2021, and so that
Shipping
was
product was a little different back then.
well, and yeah, this is a totally different era when you think about it. So this was post-browser, but really pre-cloud, like pre-public cloud, pre-mobile. So
you were still making boxed.
Oh yeah,
soft, yeah,
totally different. In fact, the first company that I started, this tech-enabled services company, we were on University Drive in Phoenix, 3600 University Drive. We had our own raised floor, fire suppression data center with our own hardware, hosting our own stuff. This was pre-co-location facilities. And that was, you can imagine the cost structure of running a company like that is so different than it is now. At Campus Logic, most of our companies that are running it at Microsoft Azure or AWS or Google Cloud are spending 2 to 3% of revenue on their cloud infrastructure. And, we were spending like 15% or something like that or more just on the infrastructure, and we had to manage all that ourselves.
We've gone down a rabbit hole.
I love rabbit holes.
I know. I have more questions though. I want to keep talking about this, but I also want to know if you could tell me something that has fundamentally changed you and made you a better founder.
I don't know if there's one thing. I'll go back to what I said earlier. You have to surround yourself with top talent. You have to be willing to listen. You have to be willing to be wrong. You have to be decisive. And so I think I've tried to be to process information and listen to what other people have to say, and at the same time be decisive. And when you're a founder, I don't know what the ratio of being wrong to right is, but it's probably 10 to 1. Like I make a lot of decisions every day where I was wrong. Now, very few of those were kill the business type decisions, so they're easy to recover from. What I would call kind of trapdoor decisions, where once you fall in and you can't get out. Very few of those are those types of decisions, but I think you have to be willing to course correct with new information a lot. And so being willing to be wrong and being okay with it and learning from other people and moving on quickly, I think are kind of foundational to being resilient and moving forward.
But did you always inherently know that? Or did that learning come over time through your own mistakes and realizing, oh, this is okay, this is part of it? Were you always okay with failure?
Well, I failed a lot, so I've learned to become more okay with it. But I'm also probably stubborn when it comes to failure. So, meaning it can be a motivator too. So not wanting to lose, is that. And I think being competitive, not with other people, but being competitive with myself has been fundamental to that too. But that's, I don't know if that answers the question.
It doesn't. But it was a good answer nonetheless. I'll take it.
I would say 67% of the time, I will not answer. I will give an answer 100% of the time, and 67% of the time, it will not be an answer to the question that was asked.
You should go into politics.
Too many skeletons.
I doubt that. All right, where are the best tacos in Arizona? And is it true that you put ketchup on your tacos? This was a rumor at Campus Logic that you have denied, and I'm inclined to believe it.
Why would I was raised in Arizona. Why on earth would you put ketchup on tacos? That's disgusting.
I don't know. You seem like the type, but I'm glad to hear it.
I mean, that's both offensive to me and everybody who was raised in Arizona. So
look, I didn't start
I'm waiting
the
for
rumor.
an apology.
Well, might be waiting until season 2. Just telling you what I heard.
I don't know why someone would say that. I've never done that in my life.
Who
But
did you make mad at Campus Logic? They started a rumor.
I have no idea.
about you.
I have no idea. Here's the question about where are the best tacos, I think is a sort of a misguided question. Does there have to be a best? I mean, there's great tacos everywhere here. There are better tacos in Arizona than any other state in the country. Yeah, I said it, California and Texas.
Oh, I agree. Oh, Texas has terrible Mexican
Yeah,
food.
I know. They don't think so, though. That's what I'm saying.
Well, it's Tex-Mex. It's not.
So I'm having dinner. We're taking some tacos over to my mom tonight for dinner.
From?
We're going to Backyard Taco. There's a couple Backyard Tacos in Mesa.
Okay.
Super simple taco, but they're different. I also, I don't go there very often, but in downtown Phoenix, there's a place called the Guild. Really cool place.
Oh,
You been there?
that's my favorite.
The old church there.
Mm-hmm.
Unique vibe, excellent tacos, kind of unique. But those are so different. One of these tacos is like carne asada and tortilla, and that's it. And then you put some other stuff on it. And the Guild is like next level gourmet taco. So that's what I mean. They're just different. But I think we should be profiling where people like. It's not where the best tacos are. It's where's the last place or where people like to eat tacos. But I think we should make that part of the show.
Yeah. Where's your go-to taco? Where's your Sunday night taco?
Well, when we officed in Chandler, I went to Los Taquitos a lot. Good beans.
All right.
Good Taco Tuesday. But yeah, I like that place a lot. So I went to graduate school in upstate New York, and there was one Mexican food. This was in Ithaca, New York. There was one Mexican food place in the whole town. Mexicali Rose is what it was called. And I apologize if they're still in business. I would be surprised if they are because it was terrible. Oh. But they put Sprouts on my burrito, and they literally had ketchup like on the table for the chips like that. So that
maybe
was
you told someone that story, and that's where it started.
Yeah, and so I left in disgust and thought these New Yorkers are good at some things, and Mexican food is not one of them. That was also the late '90s, and so they're probably better at it now.
I mean, that was a weird time.
Weird time. So you're a former software founder, and I want to hear. I think you've got a unique point of view on multiple levels. I also think I'm hoping we get into this with some of the people we interview here, but I think the experience for female founders is fundamentally different than it is for male founders, and I don't think we talk about that enough.
I would agree.
So I'd like to hear, about if you have a point of view on that, and also what your experience was raising capital in Arizona. How do you manage investors? Iris probably wasn't the outcome you wanted, but I think there's so much to learn from that. And so I want to hear about that. I've heard you on a podcast before about that.
Yeah, it was a great experience. I'm so glad I did it. I was raising money. So Iris was a public relations software. We were trying to prove the value of PR to PR agencies. And we did it. The software was actually really good. I created it for my PR agency, which I started in 2008. And we only worked with B2B tech startups in the Southwest and up into Silicon Valley, which I don't know, is Silicon Valley considered Southwest? I don't know if it is.
They wish.
I know. Anyway, we had a really successful agency. We could not prove ROI to our clients. And so I took all the cash I had in the business and I hired Kevin Wall, who was an app developer here at the time. Now he's in California. And I said, I need you to build a thing. I don't know what it is, but here's what I needed to do. And he built it. And my agency used it, and we tripled in business in about 18 months. And then other agencies in Phoenix started calling and asking for it. And I said, well, what would you pay for it? And they all started paying me for it. And then I guess I had a software company. So I went for it. And raising money, I think, was one of the most valuable experiences in my career. It just taught me so much about confidence and how to pitch and how to talk to different types of people, which was not comfortable for me at the time. And I was really doubting what I could do. I mean, when I first raised money, I said, okay, I'll raise $500,000. And Tom Curzon or Tom Blondie said, well, why not $1 million? I'm like, well, why would I raise $1 million? And they're like, well, why? Because you need it. And they had to show me, they're like, you need this money. And I genuinely thought I couldn't raise $1 million. Well, where did that come from?
Self-limiting belief.
Yes, totally self-limiting belief. No woman except for Heidi Jananga, who was a co-founder, she had a male co-founder at the time, could raise that kind of money. So I didn't have precedent. I didn't have representation here in Phoenix, but I said, okay, I'm going to go out and do it. And I raised about $2 million in total over 2 years for Iris. I thought about raising again after 5 years because we had finally found or gotten close to finding product market fit, which, as you know, is so difficult. Even when you think you have it, you're still kind of on the periphery of it. But I'm like, I think I know
Yes.
exactly what this should be. And I did not have a co-founder, which was, I think, my fatal mistake. I had some health issues, and I just decided, well, this was my first software venture, second company, tons of learnings here. I'm not going to go down this road again. Time to sunset and move on to the next thing.
Your investors, I know many of your investors, and your investors loved the way they were treated, even when the company didn't work out in the way. I mean, I've never heard anybody say anything other than, I love the way Ali treated like us on as the business kind of was sunsetting. So that is really hard to do. So that's really incredible. So it speaks to your integrity and the way that you communicated with your investors along the way.
It was a really tough decision. I mean, for any founder to sunset their company, and I was so scared I was letting my investors down. I mean, that's really what was driving me at that point because I was so totally burnt out. And a couple of my advisors said, no one here was expecting you to bring home the brass ring. Like
Yeah.
they were betting on you. You did a great job. You gave it your all. They'd probably invest in you again. And I could not hear that. I mean, that just like went right over my head because I couldn't believe it. And when I told my investors, I think it's time to sunset this company, most of them came back and said, I would invest in you again, which shocked me. But that was such a critical learning. I think that all founders need to hear that. And that doesn't mean that they should take the money and burn through it. That's not the message. The message is, I think most angel investors, which is what I had, and I know we're going to be talking to mostly VC-backed companies, but I think most angel investors invest in people and markets, not just the product itself.
Definitely true. Is there one particular investor conversation you remember from that era along the way that was particularly impactful for you? Or something you learned?
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, there were many. I was sitting in Brad Janenga's office. He was on my board at the time, and it was about 8 months in, and the flywheel had not started going yet. And I was freaking out. I mean, we had a product in market. We had people buying it. The customers were staying. They were not churning. We were iterating. I was building the team. I mean, by all accounts, it was going well. But we hadn't hit that $1 million ARR in the first year mark. We weren't even close to it. And I brought in a co-founder late stage, and she was saying, this company's a zombie. It's a zombie. And I don't know because I had never done this before. I mean, I had launched 50 software companies in the last 8 years, but I didn't know this piece of it.
From the PR launch.
From the
side
PR
of things,
launch
yep.
side. So I'm sitting in Brad's office like this with my computer, and I bring the computer up to my head and start bawling my eyes out, which is mortifying. And he's like, what is your problem, Saxe? I'm like, I'm failing. It's a zombie company, and you're an investor. Everyone's an investor, and everyone's going to lose their money. And he started laughing. He's like, Ali, you launched a product. That's all we expected you to do this year is launch a product and get some people to buy it. And we had like 50 customers at the time, including IBM, I think, was a customer. Some of the biggest agencies in the world were customers. We were in 20 plus countries. He's like, you haven't even come close to pooping the bed. Like, you're good. Just keep going. And I'm like, no, I'm going to I couldn't hear it. I'm going to let everybody down. And he said, Ali, the money that investors gave you, it is just a tool for you. And yes, you have somewhat of an obligation to work hard with that money, but that is a tool that they've given you. Just like that computer you're crying into is a tool. And they're big boys and girls, and they know that, you know, what the risks are with an angel investment. And that really stuck with me. And when I made my first angel investment in a woman-owned startup, I handed her the check and I said, I'm investing in you. This is a tool for you. There are no strings attached to this.
Great.
And I really needed her to hear that because I don't know if that's a gendered belief system or if every founder in their first, did you feel that in your first startup? I don't know.
Well, I think there's incredible pressure. Anytime you take someone else's money, there's incredible pressure because you understand that someone gave you money and they're backing you. I mean, that's a lot of pressure. So, and I think that's good. We should feel pressure. If you don't feel pressure after someone's giving you money, that's probably not the right dynamic
Correct.
either. But so I think there's a lot to learn just from more communication and better communication with investors. But that's great insight. I had one more question for you about that I wanted to ask. It's so interesting how you said you alluded to this earlier about product market fit, and you didn't use the words product market fit is fleeting or hard to know, but then later you said you had 50 customers in 20 countries and you still weren't sure you had product market fit. I think that's so fascinating because product market fit there isn't a universal definition of what product market fit means. So what lessons did you learn about product market fit? Like, what is product
Well,
market
it's such a
fit?
good question. To me, product market fit means that the product is more easily selling itself. You don't have to try so hard to sell it. You don't have to convince people to buy it and to stay with you through the early challenging onboarding and behavior changing period of time. I think once you've hit, I mean, if you look at companies that hit product market fit, that's the inflection point where the hockey stick goes up, right?
There's some market pull, right? The market's
Yes.
kind of pulling it into the market.
Yeah, it's when all your customers are creating more customers for you.
Yep. Beautiful time.
That wasn't right. That didn't happen at Iris. I mean, people had heard about us and they've heard good things and some had heard bad things because we demanded a behavior change that people didn't want to make. Some people, but you know what? They weren't our customers. So we were going after a lot of customers that we really shouldn't have been. Gregg was instrumental in teaching us that we had to focus in on a very specific customer and be the best whatever we were for that person. And it was much smaller than we thought it was. It's probably even smaller than, so what is the diagram? The TAM, SAM, and SOM. It might even be a little bit smaller than the SOM. It's who are going to be your rabid early fans that are going to tell everyone. And we had some of those, but we also had a lot of companies that probably should have been later stage customers.
Right.
So they weren't raving fans. They were using it, they were investing in it, but it just wasn't totally clicking yet. I do think that was a product issue. I don't think that was a sales or a marketing issue. I think that was a product issue in hindsight.
Yeah, I think getting product right is so hard. And even when you think you build the perfect product, even after you've iterated, there's always just more stuff to do. How many of those 50 customers were from your network, just out of curiosity? I think they're so powerful in vertical markets with someone like you as the founder. You probably had a reputation that allows you to get a bunch of customers just from your PR experience.
So the first 10 were really easy. The next 40
They were like your former clients.
Yeah, it was like people, colleagues in town, or
Right.
I would ask our existing clients, hey, do you want to implement this internally? And some of them did, some of them didn't. The next 40, I think we got up to like 60 or 70 customers total. It was really, really hard to get those customers. It is so hard to get customers. I mean, it's like the first 10 to 20 are in your network based on how big your network is or what the industry is. For me, it was probably PR agencies here in Phoenix or within my like public relations society network, but it wasn't that big. I mean, PR is a relatively small market, but we could have owned it. If I kept going and we had found product market fit, I think we could have owned it.
Gosh, there's so much to learn in vertical markets. I love vertical software. Campus Logic, of course, is a vertical software company. There's this tailwind when you get product market fit and you have great reviews or case studies. There's also a downdraft if there's a little bit of bad news about your product in the market that can really hurt you and be a headwind that is just hard to overcome. So there's pros and cons to vertical market. And I also think people overlook a lot of vertical markets because they think they're too small. But exactly what you said, you can build a dominant position in a market that's a few hundred million in size. You can build a meaningful company. And usually these end markets end up becoming bigger over time because there's more product to sell in or these extensions. So I think on this podcast, we'll be talking to a lot of vertical software founders, and I think we'll get some unique insight from them. Heidi would be another example of someone who's built a a very valuable, very large scale software company in WebPT.
Mm-hmm. I mean, Campus Logic's market was what, 3,000 potential customers?
Yeah, there's 5,000 or so colleges, universities. We probably cared the most about the top 2,500, those schools that have over 1,000 students. And so that's a very small logo count. But the way you build, a large company there is you get 50% share, which most vertical software companies that are successful in their vertical are able to do that. Mm-hmm. And you have to be able to, as an investor, you have to be able to believe, can this team grow the market through more products, and B, achieve a significant percentage of those. Otherwise, it'll be hard to achieve venture type returns.
Yeah, most investors are scared of that kind of number. It's too small.
Yeah, I can't tell you. The number one reason people passed on Campus Logic was because they thought the market was too small. And those people who had experience, I mean, someone like JMI Equity, JMI has done a ton of work in higher education. They've been a core investor in higher education for a couple decades, and education more broadly. So it wasn't hard for them to understand the market size, but absolutely, it's hard if you don't understand a particular market dynamic. It's easy to overlook those things. Also, if you're a consumer investor and you invest in like B2C or like direct to consumer type companies, almost by necessity, you have to be going after gigantic markets because those usually have very low price points, or there might even be a freemium kind of advertising type model. And so those just require really enormous markets.
True.
I am so excited for season 1 here.
Me too.
Yeah, it's going to be a great time with people that are building venture scale software companies right here in Arizona. We want to put the great founders of Arizona front and center. And if anybody has any suggestions on who we should be interviewing for the podcast, please let us know. We'd love to meet those awesome founders that I'm still surprised. I meet companies and I'm thinking, how do I not know that software company that's being built here? So I do think we can do a lot better job, which this podcast is trying to help with, of telling the stories of the incredible founders that are building venture scale companies right here in Arizona.
Absolutely. All right, here we go.
Let's go.
Stay curious and stay tuned for a season of incredible interviews with 6 amazing founders in our city.